Hello everyone, welcome to Inclusive Bharat and welcome to the daily editorial analysis of the Hindu newspaper. In this video, we'll be discussing the important editorials from the Hindu newspaper for 31st August 2024. I've taken 3 articles for the discussions. Let us explore each article in detail. So first article, Growth Matrix. So this article is discussing the state of India's economy of in the first quarter of 2024-2025 financial year and what needs to be done to improve it. So this is the current financial year 2024-2025. So what is the financial year? It starts from April 1st of 2024 and it ends in March 31st of 2025. Okay. So here in the first quarter, what is the first quarter? First quarter starts from April and ends in June. So April to June. So this is the first quarter. So here this article is discussing what is the state of Indian economy in the first quarter, that is from April to June, and what is need to be done to improve it. Okay, first we'll understand what is GDP. So GDP is nothing but the total money value of all the goods and services produced within the country. That is called GDP. If we add all the money values of the goods and services produced in a country for a whole year, then we call it as the GDP of that year. So what is GDP growth rate? Growth rate means it is comparing the current, what is the GDP, and it's comparing with the previous year's GDP, and then how much percentage it is increased or decreased. So that is what we call it as growth. I mean, that is how much percentage it has increased from the last year. That is called growth rate. So every year, this RBI will predict a GDP growth rate yearly and also quarterly. And here the article says that in the first quarter there is a decline. See, who's giving this GDP? The National Statistical Office, okay, the NSO, which is under the Ministry of Statistical and Program Implementation. They are the one who gives this GDP. Okay, here you see the GDP growth rate. See, the economy grew by 6.7% from April to June 2024. This is the lowest growth rate in 5-year quarters and is below what Reserve Bank of India has predicted. So Reserve Bank of India has predicted some value, but here the GDP growth is only 6.7%. If you see the same first quarter one, that is from April to June in the year 2023-2024, the growth rate was 8.2%. The growth rate was 8.2%, but now the growth rate is just 6.7%. In the year 2023-2024, the growth rate is 8.2%, but this year the growth rate of the first quarter is 6.7%. Okay, if you see the real GDP or the GDP at constant price, we call it as. So in the first quarter for 2024-2025 is estimated at 43.64 lakh crore against the 40.91 lakh crore in the quarter 1 of 2023-2024. Okay, see the growth is for last year 2023-2024, the total GDP count was 40.91 lakh crore, and this year it is just 43.64. It is an increase, but as expected there is no that much increase. It is just only 6.7% increased. So from here if you compare, it is 6.7%. Okay, that is 6.7%. See, what was the RBI's expectation? So RBI has expected that the economy would grow by 7.2% for this quarter, but adjusted its forecast to 7.1 earlier. So initially the RBI focused on 7.2% growth rate and then they revised it to 7.1, but yet the GDP growth have not reached 7.1, it just reached only 6.7. The actual growth was even lower than the revised estimate. So comparing GDP and GVA, say the gross domestic product growth rate was 6.7%, whereas the gross value addition growth was slightly better to 6.8%. So what is GVA? It is another way to measure the economic activity and can sometimes differ from GDP. Say, what is gross value added? This is also a significant macroeconomic indicator as like GDP. This measures the value of goods and services produced in an economy, but this will be calculated after deducting the cost of input and the raw materials used in the production process. Okay, if you wanted to produce a rubber, okay, so this rubber will have an initial input cost, right? Inputs, inputs as like rubber from the farm has to be imported, and then we have to create it as tire, for example. Okay, if you want to do it, so this GVA, this will add the value of goods and services produced for this tire, but this will deduct the input cost, that is the raw materials cost. So that is how only the value addition to the product. See, rubber is just a rubber. When you add some value, that becomes a tire. So if you remove this inputs and the raw materials cost, then you will know only what is the GVA added, that is the gross value addition. So this is also another way by calculating the, this is also another significant macroeconomic indicator that shows how a country GDP or GVA grows. Okay, what are the factors affecting this economic growth? See here, the factors affecting are, first is the monsoon, and then the government spending, and then the private consumption. So before getting into this, let's understand how to calculate the GDP. Here, I said that GDP is nothing but the total money value of goods and services produced in a country. But here you see the GDP formula is, GDP is nothing but how much is the private consumption, that is households. Okay, how much is the household their consumption, and the gross investments from private sectors, other sectors, what are the investments, and also what are the government investments, and how much is the government spending, and also what is the export minus import value. So all these things will be added to get the GDP. Okay, the private consumption, that is household consumptions and other consumptions, and how much is the gross investments, that is the private sectors, how they are investing, and what is the government expenditures, government investments also, and also how the government is spending, and also how much is the export and import. So all these things will be calculated in the GDP. So any changes in this will affect the GDP growth rate. First thing is monsoon impact. See, the normal monsoon was expected to help the economy by boosting the agriculture output and reducing the inflation, especially in rural areas where the demand has been weak. Okay, however, the monsoon is being inconsistent. So the monsoon should be consistent so that we will have more agriculture output, thereby inflation is reduced. But it is not happening because of the monsoon is being inconsistent, which could affect crops, and consequently there is a rise of inflation, a rise in the price. That's called inflation. And second thing is the government spending. So the government planned to increase its spending on infrastructure and other capital projects by 17% this year. So that when government is spending more on infrastructure, that is capital expenditure, capex. If government is more investing on this capex, that is really good for a country. That will help grow the economy. But because of the general election, the spending has slowed down. So the government needs to increase its efforts to meet its spending target. And third thing is the private consumption. That is spending by each and every individuals and the households, that is the private consumption, has reached a high of 7.4%, best in 6 months. So if you compare, the private consumption has been increased, but this increase is partially because of the inflation, that is the overall price increase. See, the price has to get increased, no doubt in it. So that is why we have the target, the Monetary Policy Committee's target, the MPC, the Monetary Policy Committee's target of inflation, that has to be between 4 plus or minus 2%, that is from 2 to 6. So the inflation has to be between 2 to 6. That's good for an economy. But here, how is the inflation? What are the reasons for this inflation? So it's because of there are less demand, more demand, and generally the price have been increased. That's why it shows like even the food price has increased, the inflation is still high. That is why it shows that the private consumption has reached 7.4%. So what are the challenges and the future outlooks? See, in India, the farm sector growth has improved slightly. Okay, but next few weeks it will be crucial in determining whether its improvement will continue, especially because of the unpredicted weather. So due to the unpredicted weather, if you see, will there be an improvement in farm sector? We have to wait and watch. And also, if the RBI delay in lowering the interest rate, it could potentially reduce the GDP growth by 1% over the next year, and so on. That is, see, what is the potential risk? Why the RBI should lower the interest rate? What rate that RBI has to reduce? See, RBI every bi-monthly, they used to come up with this repo rate. Okay, or repo rate. Currently, repo rate is at 6.5%, if I'm not wrong. Okay, the repo rate, it is nothing but the rate at which the central bank of the country, that is the RBI, lends money to the commercial banks in the event of any shortfalls of fund. So for this fund, the central bank will purchase securities from the banks. See, RBI, you have the RBI and you have many banks. Okay, scheduled, non-scheduled banks, commercial, non-commercial banks, and all the banks. Okay, when RBI will give fund at 6.5%, okay, 6.5% is the interest. When they lower the interest, if you lower it to 5.5%, see, initially all the banks will have money, they will provide loan and they will earn interest rate. So when they provide loan has been provided, and that's why there will be more investments. Yes or no? If RBI is providing at the rate of 6.5%, only few, let's take this scenario. RBI is giving a loan at 6.5%, lending money at 6.5%. So the bank will buy this money and they will give loans at for example 9% or 10% or 11% or 12%, depending upon various factors like home loans or car loans and different things. And business loans also is there. So there is an investment. If this 6.5 has been reduced to 6%, what will happen? Bank will buy more money so that they will give more loans. So that is the concept. And if there are more inflation, that is money supply is high in the economy, what the RBI will do? They will increase the repo rate. If they increase the repo rate to 7%, for example, if they increase it, the money will flow back to RBI. Because RBI itself is giving 7% interest rate, then why should a bank, they have to invest on many things and provide loans and buying back those loans? There are a lot of works. So what they will do, what the other banks will do, they will put their money in the RBI. This is how the money is sucked from the market. And then, that's why the potential risk is that RBI delays lowering interest rate. So if they delay this lowering interest rate, then the money supply will be less. If you are not delaying it and right away you are lowering the interest rate, then there will be more money supply in the market, and that's why there will be a potential growth. But here, if you delay it, that will reduce the GDP growth by 1% in the next year. So the long-term growth concern, the Indian economic growth rate might slow down to 6.5% in the next financial year, with medium-term growth potential around this level. If this level continues, there will be growth rate is just 6.5%. This rate is considered very, very slow. It is too slow to be effectively, because if the growth rate is at 6.5%, it is you cannot provide a good jobs, and also this you cannot use the growing young population. So the growing young population, we have the demographic dividend. If you wanted to use it, the GDP growth has to be faster, because we have all over the world, India's young population is higher. So what are the needs for the reform? See, Geeta Gopinath, the top official from International Monetary Fund, that is IMF, okay, she stressed that India needs to implement significant reforms across all the areas of the economy. We have to bring in reforms in all the sectors of the economy. These reforms would help to improve how efficiently the economy operates and how efficiently or effectively institutions like judiciary function. Okay, the importance of reform is that making these changes is crucial to increase the country's country's growth potential and ensure enough jobs are created to support its young population. So without the reforms in all the sectors in the economy, India might not be able to take the full advantage of the demographic dividend. Okay, that is the economic benefits of having larger work age population. So India is the largest working age populations throughout the world. So in conclusion, India's economy is growing. It's not at the pace, not at the speed of what is expected or needed. So the article suggests that to improve the growth, the government needs to accelerate its spending, monitor agriculture performance closely, and third thing, pursue significant economic reforms. So first thing is spending, then agriculture reforms, and then the significant economic reforms. Okay, these are the three things that the government has to do to improve India's GDP growth rate. So that is all about this article. Let's move on to the next article. A game plan for India's success at 2036 Olympic host. So India is planning to host Olympic in 2036. So the article discusses India's plan and preparation to host 2036 Olympic Games. So let us understand this article in detail, whether India will host it in 2036, what are the criteria, how the Olympic host country is selected, what are the procedures. Let's understand this in detail. See, India Olympics ambition. See, in the Independence Day speech, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he has expressed India's dream to host 2036 Olympic Games. So he mentioned that the preparation for this is already underway. A big challenge. What is the big challenge here? See, hosting the Olympics is a bold idea because India has never hosted the Olympics before, and the country has not always performed well in global sports competition. Also, India currently lacks the high quality sports infrastructure needed for such a big event. Okay, see, hosting idea is a very good idea, but India's sports infrastructure, we need high quality sports infrastructures, and also India has not been performed well when we compare it with other countries in the global sports competition. But it is possible. Why it is possible? See, despite these challenges, if you see, the idea isn't impossible because India's ability in the sports is improving, and Indian athletes are gaining more respects globally. If you see, for example, many sports, for example, the badminton. Okay, we have more young players getting into this badminton, and if you see Neeraj Chopra, they are getting international recognitions. Okay, the country engagement with sports at its high level as ever. So, but for India to succeed in its bid to host the Olympics, it needs to build support from inside the country and also internationally. So, in order to, there is a bid to host Olympic. There is a bid from many countries. If you wanted to win this, so we need support from both inside the country and also internationally. We need the support. That's what this article is saying. So how an Olympic host is chosen? See, hosting an Olympics requires a lot of preparation, especially the building the necessary infrastructures like stadiums and other facilities. So the article mentions how the author observed this firsthand while visiting the preparation for Paris 2024 Olympics. So before writing this article, the author have observed in firsthand how 2024 Paris Olympics preparation has been taken place. And now there is a new process for selecting the hosts. Since 2019 onwards, the process for selecting the Olympics host has been changed. So these changes were made by the International Olympic Committee, the IOC, after there was accusation and corruption in choosing the host in 2016 Rio and 2020 Tokyo Olympics. Okay, in 2020 Tokyo and 2016 Rio, the host, when there was who has to host, under that there was accusations of corruptions. So now that corruption part will get away because we have future host commission. So now the potential host cities interact secretly with the future host commission, a special group set up by the International Olympic Committee. This group not only ensures a fair selection process, but also checks if the hosting the Olympics is practical looks at the environment and human rights issue in a country. When a country bids for the uh, bids for the next Olympics, the future host commission will have a fair selection process. It will check whether it is practical for a country to host Olympics, and also looks at the environmental and the human rights issue in that country. So the selection of 2036 hosts. Say the IOC, International Olympics Committee, planned to hold an election to choose the host for 2036 Olympics after discussion led by the FHC. So after having discussion with the FHC, there will be an election taking place. So this decision will likely to happen in 2026. We'll have to wait and watch whether India will win this bid. So India's step towards hosting an Olympics. So India's efforts since 2010. What are the steps that India has taken so that we can tell the international community that India will host Olympics perfectly. See, what are the efforts? If you see, India started moving towards hosting the Olympics after successfully hosting the Commonwealth Games in 2010. We hosted Commonwealth Games in 2010. The government reformed the Sports Association through the National Sports Development Code. So government have brought in this National Sports Development Code that will improve the sports environment at all levels. And also in 2017, we have this Khelo India scheme. The Khelo India scheme is to improve the sports facilities, develop talents, promote sports, and establish sports academies. So this program also focused on finding talents of young athletes between the age of 9 to 18 and providing them with government supports. And because of the government support, some of these athletes have been participated in the Paris Olympics also. So what are the roles of a state and the sports events? So in India, sports falls under the responsibility of the individual states according to the constitution. So sports comes under the state list. It comes under the state list of the 7th schedule. Under 7th schedule, we have union list, state list, and concurrent list. So this sports comes under the state list. Okay, so this means the state plays a key role in developing sports infrastructure. If you see Tamil Nadu is leading state in terms of sports infrastructure. The state government recently announced a plan to build a global sports city near Chennai, which will include various international sports facilities. And also beach sports. Tamil Nadu is also focusing on beach sports because India, in all over the world, the second largest beach is in India. That is the Marina Beach. Okay, it is hosting international events like surfing competitions and beach volleyball tournaments and many others. So planning for the future. So the biggest cost for the countries hosting the Olympics is building sports infrastructure. In Paris, they have used the existing facility to save money on new constructions. So if you take India, states like Tamil Nadu, Delhi, Odisha already have several Olympic standard facilities. By using this existing infrastructure, India can make a bid to host 2036 Olympics, more cost effective and environmental friendly. So we can bid to host 2036 Olympics because we already have Olympic standard facilities in states like Tamil Nadu, Delhi, and Odisha. So this is more cost effective and environmentally friendly. So this is one criteria that is seen by the Future Host Commission. So what is the need for here? We need a cooperation. What is that? See, to make a successful bid for the Olympics, all political parties, government, and the stakeholders in India, they need to come together and work for the national interest. The leadership for this effort should come from the highest level of the union government. So the leadership has to come from the higher level. So India bid must be built through cooperation among the various stakeholders, including the state government also. A committee with representatives from different states and stakeholders should be formed to plan the bid. There should be a committee which includes all from different states and all the stakeholders. By using the expertise and facilities like the state facilities, so facilities in Tamil Nadu and Odisha, the committee can create a best possible proposal in line with criteria set by the FHC. So we can come up with the best proposal by using the expertise and all the facilities which are there in different countries like Tamil Nadu, Delhi, and Odisha. It is important to show that the existing sports infrastructure in some states to strengthen India's bid to host. So we have to show already we have a good infrastructure. That is how the bid has to go. So we have to give a proper and a best possible proposal. So as a conclusion, to successfully bid 2036 Olympics, India needs to be very careful, use the existing sports infrastructure, ensure that all relevant parties work together for this common goal. By doing this, India can present a strong proposal that reflects its growing potential in this global sports arena. So that is all about this article. Let us move to the next article. The collapse of categories and post-individualism. Okay, this article is written by Verghese K. George, and he discusses how the traditional categories like gender, citizenship, and individualism are becoming increasingly fluid and contested in the modern society. So this article, the author is comparing gender, citizenship, and individualism, how it was in traditionally how it was, and now in the modern society, what are the changes, how this gender, citizenship, and individualisms have been changed, that is becoming more fluid. Okay, let's get into this in detail. Let's now understand what are categories. What are the categories in governance? See, categories are always labeling and grouping people, place, events, and activities. We are labeling, these are some group of people, these are some places. We are grouping some places or some events or some activities. So these are essential for governance and politics. Yes, we have to group. Okay, for these are very much essential for governance and politics. For example, deciding who is citizen and who belongs to a specific sports category is based on categorization. See, we have a rigid rules on citizenship in India. It's been little flexible also. So citizenship, so this is also one kind of categorization, and specific sports personalities and specific sports category, that is also a kind of categorization. Examples from Paris Olympics. See, in 2024 Paris Olympics, they showed both strictness and flexibilities of categorization. For example, see Vinesh Phogat, he was disqualified. She was disqualified because of 100 grams overweight. So here, weight, the weight is being very rigid. So this category and this category, the weight is being very rigid. However, Imani Khalif, an Algerian boxer, okay, faced a question about her sex, showing how some categories like genders are being more fluid and subject to interpretations. In Paris Olympics itself, there are two things where weight categorization of weight is being very rigid, but categorization of gender it become more fluid. Okay, she's a woman, but her gender, if you see her gender, let's first understand what is the difference between sex and gender, then I'll explain what happened. Okay, so challenges of fluid categorization. So changing views on sex and gender. See, the article explains that sex, which has been seen as a clear biological fact, that is being male or female, this is just a biological fact. Now it is becoming more flexible. See, nowadays people are increasingly viewing that sex and gender as a matter of personal choice, particularly in United States. So this is a personal choice. So this shift causes confusion and debate, especially regarding how to define sex and gender in sports and other areas. So in United States, there are personal choice of viewing what is sex and gender. So that is a personal choice. But when it comes to sports and other areas, it is very important how to define the sex and gender. See, throughout history, the fluidity of categories have made governance difficult. Whenever the categorization, when we categorize sex or gender or other things uh, like places, events, people, activities, whenever there is a fluidity in this categorization, that has become more difficult for the governance. For example, questioning about citizenship, crime, legitimate politics, and borders have often led to conflict because people have different interpretation of these categories. So when we have a rigid citizenship, crime, that is very easy for a governance. But I'm not telling it's a good governance. But nowadays there are increasing fluidity on the citizenship, crime, legitimate politics, and borders. Okay, so this has led to conflict. Okay, now also there is a rise of individualism. See, in modern times, what is individualism? In individualism, where each person is seen as independent and autonomous unit, and this is celebrated as a sign of progress. So individuality. Nowadays, we say I'm being more independent and I'm being an autonomous unit. I don't want any other self. I can be alone. And people often see this, and this is celebrated as a sign of progress. But traditional communities that imposes rules and norms on the individuals are often viewed as outdated or restrictive, because traditionally communities were being together. Okay, they work for each other. Now, that was their being a traditional community, they imposed rules and norms. But nowadays it is seen as very outdated and being more restrictive on an individual. So nowadays that's why individualism that has been celebrated as a sign of progress. Biological sex as an agreed upon category. See, traditionally categories like male and female were universally accepted across different cultures, religions, and scientific beliefs. For example, even some creationists have agreed with an evolutionary biologist that there are needed a two clearer sex, male and the female, because the biological needs for reproduction. So traditionally there is this categorization of male and female that was universally accepted across different cultures, religions, and scientific beliefs, because these are two clear sexes, sexes, that is male and female, because they need for reproduction. So in order to have reproduction, it was universally accepted. But what is the new idea of choice? Let's understand what is sex and gender difference. Okay, sex, that refers to biological attributes. It's just a biological attributes, whereas gender, this refers to roles, behaviors, and identities that are socially constructed. What are the roles, what are the works they do, how they behave, and their identities. That refers to gender. So here sex is generally categorized as male and female, but gender is seen as spectrum that can change over time. So gender is changing over the time. So debates on the gender transition. If you see, a significant debate today is whether people should be allowed to change their sex to align with their gendered identity, and if so, at what age. So these are debates nowadays, because biologically, if we see, they are, for example, if biologically there might be a female sex, but their gender identity reveals that they are male, then they wanted to change. Okay, they wanted to change their sex to align with the gender. If so, if you wanted to change, then at what age it has to be. So these are the debates on gender transition. These questions are hotly debated in the places like United States, particularly around issues like public schools, policies, and healthcare. In these areas, it is particularly, and these areas, there are a lot of debates. So individualism and identity. See, traditionally, if you see, individualism was about the unity of mind and body. So the body was seen as something to be preserved, and any changes to it were meant to restore its normal function. So what they say, see, individualism is about unity of mind and body. The mind and body, they have to get united. If there is a change, there is something, the body, the body was seen as something to be preserved. So the body should always be preserved. If there is some changes in the mind, you have to change. That is how the traditional view was. So gender affirming care, which includes medical procedures to change a person's physical characteristics to match their gender identity, challenges this traditional view. Because traditionally we say that whatever, there should not be any changes with the body, so the mind has to be changed. But nowadays, there are medical procedures so that a person having a physical characteristics, they can change it to match their gender identity. So this is challenging the traditional view. So it suggests that the body should adapt to its mind's feeling, not the other way around. So the body should adapt to the mind's feeling, not the other way around. This is the new concept and can lead to fragmented sense of self, as it changes the traditional idea of stable, unchanging individual. Okay. So the impact of new technologies. So the article discusses how science and technology, they do not just discover reality but also create new ones. As new medical technologies become available, the ability to change one's sex may become more common, further blurring the lines between the biological sex and the gender identity. So the debate over gender and the sex is causing a deep social and political division. There is a deep social and the political division, especially in Western societies. One part of the society wants to hold on into the traditional ideas about the sex and gender, but other pushes for a more fluid and inclusive definition. So as a conclusion, this article says, the article suggests that the ongoing debate about the gender, identity, individualisms are causing significant social fragmentation, which is producing a significant social fragmentation. Traditional categories and ideas are being challenged, leading to new forms of identity and societal structure. This changes is creating a lot of debates and conflicts, especially in the society that have traditional valued individualisms and clear categories. So as in summary, the article explores how the changing understanding of categories like gender, citizenship, individualism is reshaping the society, leading to both new opportunities and new challenges in how we define ourselves and govern our communities. So that is all about this article. So by this, I end the discussions of today's important editorials from the newspaper. If you like this initiative, please do like and share with your peer groups and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.